I'm Matt Van Vliet. I'm been a COHAA board member, and Bart and I started this conference however many years ago. And if you've known me, I talk about Agile being a mindset, and that you have to be Agile, and all these other practices and things are interesting, but it's something that you have to live, and it's a lot easier to roll out and convince people and teach people these things if they've got the right mindset. So Gil Broza is a perfect speaker for that type of a topic because he has a book about Agile mindset. So he's going to talk about that, and I think it's really going to be a fitting end to the first day to make sure we understand that all of these individual practices are just the best way we know how to do some things today, but they're all to achieve that purpose, right? And we have that mindset that we have to be Agile, and we have to find ways to turn ideas into reality instead of finding ways to just do work or execute some type of a process, that we're gonna be more effective. And he gave me a little introduction here with some notes that I might want to talk about. And the thing I found here was that he has 12-year-old twins. So that probably forces him to have the right mindset and to think in an agile manner. So that's probably 12 years of experience right there that we could probably learn from.
Well, 24.
So, what?
24.
24 years, that's right. It brings pairing to a whole new concept because they can pair and gang up against him. So anyway, I want to introduce Gil Broza.
Right. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me well in the back? Okay. All right. Well, I have my helpful AV crew here to help with that. It gives me great pleasure to be here. I was last in Columbus, I believe, 3 years ago, and I gave a talk at COHAA. I think it was at CareWorks that I gave that talk. It was just after my previous book, The Human Side of Agile. This is about the other one, the mindset. And it is a delight to share my message with so many people who are interested in Agile. Quick show of hands. Raise your hand if where you work, teams do daily stand-ups. Almost everybody. All right, so the next exercise is fitting. I'm going to ask you to buddy up with a neighbor, whether you work with them or not. Imagine a hypothetical stand-up. Imagine two, hypothetical team members. They've just been to one, and they're just leaving the stand-up, and they're talking about it. What is one likely to say to the other? Again, in a typical hypothetical stand-up where you work. You have a minute, share with each other. All right. That was a minute. So let me ask you for a show of hands. If what you shared was positive, this was a good meeting, we changed something, we adapted something, we learned something new, raise your hand. There's maybe 30 hands here. What if you, raise your hand if you said something negative along the lines of, what a waste of time, I could have been productive in those 15 minutes. Okay, a lot more. So I find this peculiar. It's actually the sort of statistic I get whenever I give this talk, that the people who come up with a negative response far outnumber the people who come up with a positive response, maybe because we like to beat up on the daily stand-up, but that's not so much the interesting point. The interesting point is that this is supposed to be a fundamental piece of your Agile practice. It's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be something that gets you results. It's supposed to be of benefit to the people who participate in it. So how come we get such polar opposite responses? Some people like it and some people hate it. Well, to me, that's symptomatic of something else that's going on here. I have been in Agile since before it had a name. And in that time, over a decade and a half, I have been developer, dev manager, consultant, facilitator, trainer, author, and general purpose troublemaker. And wherever I go, I see people stumble on the same things in the rush to adopt Agile. And I want to share with you 3 particular problems that catch my attention. The first one is people follow Agile as described. Usually it's Scrum. Doesn't have to be. They might roll their own. Doesn't matter. But they think that they're doing everything right. And the results somehow don't follow. And here's the kicker. They don't know why. They don't know why that is because they seem to be doing everything right. So the implementation there is stalled, but that's not the problem. Agile implementation is not the goal, it's a means. But what happens there is that as they implement Agile thinking, they get into trouble and performance drops. And that goes straight to the bottom line. Here's the other thing. People get into Agile thinking, oh, not a big deal, right? 7 plus minus 2, stories, PO, Scrum Masters, dailies, demos. Sounds good, right? Sounds easy. We can scale it. And very quickly, they discover that the change runs deeper and wider than they thought. No big surprise. Everybody's always said that. But along the way, this stuff happens. This stuff happens. People are being pushed out because they no longer fit. Usually what they don't fit is a misunderstanding of Agile, but let's say that didn't happen. Management and staff, they have a relationship of trust, presumably. That trust erodes, assuming it was there in the first place, because nobody quite seems to know what they're doing. And the third problem is that there's shoddy work getting done. This is particularly true of those environments that pick Scrum without the technical practices, which everybody says you should do this, but somehow they don't get adopted that much. And what that means is that shoddy work gets done until they realize what happened. And the third problem is that nobody seems to agree. People argue all the time what is Agile and what it is not. Nobody seems to agree. The confusion is everywhere. So if you're confused, well, can't you at least just follow established procedure? Turns out that when you do that, it's essentially adherence to form over function. Basically, like for instance, do Scrum as it says. And that doesn't necessarily help. We're here to talk about why that doesn't necessarily help. And I just want to make sure you understand this. This is not a knock on Scrum. Scrum is awesome when done as intended. And in most cases, it is not done as intended. It is copied from somebody else's recipe. So the problem that really gets me in all of this is that people no longer know how to succeed. This is true both of individual contributors and of management. Nobody knows how to succeed anymore because the standards have changed and they haven't caught on yet in a way that is sustainable. So this is what I think about it. It's been 15 years. Sorry, no, it's been 20 years since Agile was sort of put together, 15 years since it got its name, 10 years since it started getting the world's attention, 5 that the world is starting to scale it, and somehow we're still not there yet. I think people are too enamored with those Agile practices. I think that is to blame, because what really matters is how you approach those practices, and if the approach says something else, then you do something else, but we're not seeing evidence of that. So in this talk, what I want to share with you is what I know about the Agile mindset. It is composed of 3 things: values, beliefs, and principles, which we are going to explore here. And you also have a take-home handout for you, because there's a lot of detail here. Because I want to help you understand how to effectively choose your methods, and sometimes Agile is not what you should be choosing. It is not designed to cover every possible scenario, because there are some scenarios that it is a better response for, and some scenarios where it is not. So if you do decide that it is for you, I want to make sure that your implementation is mindful. Okay, it comes from the right place. So if you saw yourselves in the previous descriptions, those 3 problems, then this is the right place for you. And we are going to start by looking at that thing that is called a mindset. And in order to make that practical for you, we're going to be talking about a lot of theory, a lot of abstractions. That's why there's mostly words on the slides and not pretty pictures. That's also why you have a handout. So to get us a bit more grounded, I'm going to ask you to just think about a specific big work that you did recently or are still in the midst of. It might be a project. It might be just a long-term team thing. It doesn't matter. I'm going to show you 3 statements, and I'm going to ask you to think which of the 3 statements best describes the work that you're involved in. Okay? And so as we go through this talk, you will see how we hang some of what we learn on that undertaking that you're thinking of. So if this statement describes it, we work closely with our customers and we deliver valuable product frequently. If you think that this statement describes what you have going on is probably Agile, okay? But what about this statement? So we've adopted Agile practices and roles and tools and artifacts, but the way we work doesn't feel particularly Agile to me. That would sort of put you in the category of going through the Agile motions. But what about this one? We produce big deliverables based on early commitments of time, budget, and scope. I would say that probably classifies your work as waterfall. So I'm going to ask for just a quick show of hands, and we're going to use some form of sign language for this one. Who here went with the first statement, which was the better fit out of the three? Okay? All right. Probably something like 10, 20%. Who went with this? You can admit it, it's okay. All right, about the same percentage. Who went with this? We basically go through the motions. Okay, so we have sort of like an even split. So hold on to that one, it will make its comeback very soon. So before we can use this information, we even need to describe what that whole mindset is. This is the diagram that you're seeing on the first page in your handout. When you do work, you do it for a reason. Those are the objectives or the needs that you're fulfilling or accomplishing for the work. So it can be an implementation project. It can be building a new application. It can even be, I don't know, rebuilding your house. The work has a purpose. Okay, so that's like, the first step whenever we do work. I'm sure you guys do that. No matter how you capture the objectives, they should be known and understood by everybody on the project or on the team. But now let's look at the bottom of the diagram. The bottom of the diagram are all those visible elements of work that yield results. We pick processes, we pick practices and procedures, we implement tools, we identify roles, we develop artifacts. For the longest time, no matter what the objective was, we had a standard way of answering the question, what's in that bottom rectangle? How will we get work done? The standard answer included stuff like have a project manager, have milestones and phases and gates, red, yellow, green reporting or some other flavor of reporting, estimating, milestones, Gantt charts, RACI matrices, sign-offs, and so on. This has been the standard way of getting work done for many, many years. 20 years ago, Agile shows up, gives us another alternative. And nowadays, when you go and say, let's do Agile on this one, there seems to be some sort of standard response to what's involved in that. You need to identify somebody as your product owner. You want to put your team together. That team ought to be cross-functional. You work in small cycles or using Kanban. You write stories in a particular template. You do demos every now and then, hopefully frequently. If you're also looking at the technical level, you write some unit tests, you have CI, blah, blah, blah. So this is sort of the accepted norm. But notice what I've described here. I've described how you move from objective to how do we get work done. And throughout this, totally ignored that gray matter in the middle. That gray matter in the middle is our mindset. And the troubling thing about it is that it is invisible. It's all here. It is subjective. It's fair to say that my mindset is not the same as yours, and it's not the same as yours. It's intangible, invisible. So how do we make sure that we think about the work the same way? This is stuff we don't usually make explicit. It's not usually the subject of conversations. We usually just jump into the work and get stuff done. It is so easy to just say, well, okay, we're going to pick one thing that has been prepackaged for us. Maybe it's by PMI, in the PMBOK, by Waterfall, Agile, Kanban. Doesn't matter. We're just going to pick it and run with it. It is so easy. It is so tempting. You can show that you're doing this. If somebody asks you to go Agile, you can prove compliance. but it might not be the best thing to do. And in fact, it might even be irresponsible to make that jump without getting into the stuff in the middle. So let's see what's involved in that. And we're going to start with the lower level, the principles. So you all know what principles are. Here's a definition. It's a simple one. I want to show you examples of how principles play into how we get work done. And I'm just going to use examples from the 3 most popular approaches that we have. So in Agile, a big principle is collaboration, right? It is not an Agile invention, but it is certainly something that we want in Agile. It is not a practice, it is a principle. The idea is that when you have work to do, get 2 or more people on it. This definitely elevates the upside by getting more ideas, and it also mitigates the downside of people missing stuff and misinterpreting and solving the wrong thing. Another principle in Agile is getting to done. Okay? Getting your work to a shippable or releasable state. Again, this is not a practice. It gives rise to good ideas, such as the definition of done. It gives rise to the idea of putting, let's say, developers and testers together on the same team, because then they can finish something quicker. It gives rise to not taking too many things into your work in progress columns, because you can actually finish them more. Let's look at a couple principles from Lean. A big one in Lean is eliminating waste. The idea that in everything you do between idea and deliverable, or revenue, there is some waste. Some activities or delays or bottlenecks that don't do anything useful for you, try to reduce them, if not eliminate them outright. That's a principle. From a Lean perspective, that accomplishes something important. Here's another Lean one. And this is one that Agile stole quite freely. That's why you don't actually see it in the manifesto. It came up later. Deferring decisions to the last responsible moment. The idea that you shouldn't commit to anything prematurely. Anytime you're faced with making a decision, what will this feature include? How will we test it? How will we design it? Should we work on it at all? You might want to delay that decision somewhat to be better informed when you make it, as long as the expense, the cost, the risk are not too high. So you might know this principle by another name, and it's just in time. Here are 2 principles from Waterfall. A very well-known one is sign-off. Okay? So sign-off is not so much the practice, it's the idea that you are not done until somebody more authorized than you has said so. Now, if you recall the arrow in the diagram going from principles down to practices and whatnot, when we have this principle of sign-off, how will we implement it? Well, we might implement it with gates and with meetings and physical signatures and stuff like that. Okay? So these principles give rise to everything we choose to do. Here's another one, a particularly offensive one. You have workers. You will want to maximize the time they're kept busy. Again, it doesn't tell you how to do that, but that's the idea. Don't have workers idle for more than you absolutely have to. So, these are examples of principles. Agile has 26 of them. Now, when the manifesto was written, they came up with what they called 12. They are written in the software language. They are very specific. But in the 15 years since then, we have learned about a few more that belong in Agile, and we identify with Agile, but they were just not included at that time. So what I'm going to show you, this is like a whirlwind tour, and this is all on pages 2 and 3 of your handout. What I want to show you is how do we approach Agile work without naming practices or frameworks. Fundamentally, we have 3 principles. We want feedback on what we do and how we do it. We want to learn about what we do and how we do it, and our market and technology and customer and ourselves and managers and everything else. And we put those together for the purpose of improvement. We want to continuously improve what we do. This is the one big deal and one big area that Agile shares with Lean. To do that, we have a bunch of good ideas about getting work done. we tend to work in time boxes. Now, you might also limit work in progress, but the concept is only take on a small amount of work. The concept is don't do too much. You have big work to do, chop it up into smaller bits. What comes out of those smaller bits should be shippable. That's the whole get-to-done business. It should all fall out of an outcome, not outputs. Outcomes, things that move needles, things that matter to the customer, to the business. As you make choices, what you choose to work on, be effective, not just efficient. This is a point that's lost on most of the world. Let me tell you this. They think that Agile is for efficiency. That is a lie. Agile is primarily for effectiveness, doing the right thing, solving the right problems, addressing the right needs. And only once you got that working out, now make it more efficient. So effectiveness comes first. And as we work, we want team results, not individual results, team results. Everything we put into our smaller chunks, like our time boxes, what do we put into it? We put into it all those decisions whose time has now come, all the decisions that we deferred before. We simplify our product because complexity will kill us. Agile is formulated for complex work. We want to simplify constantly. We want to experiment. So what we put on the backlog, for instance, is never a certainty. It's usually a good idea, but it's still unvalidated. So whenever we should really experiment with what we think is right. As we do all of this, we want to work at a cadence that's good for business, at a cadence that's even possible for business, the frequency of actually delivering something useful. We want to amplify quality because the client cares for that. And we want to work reliably, work cleanly. That's the antidote to technical debt. As we do all of this, we want to drive down the cost of change. Why? Because it's not about the cost of work anymore. It's about the cost of change. If change is going to happen, we want to respond to it economically and without drama. Now, remember the first line from the Agile Manifesto, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. That's what it translates into. 11 good ideas about how to treat people. What you see in the middle are the individuals. We want 4 things so people even participate willingly. We want trust and respect and personal safety to do stuff in the interest of the greater good without expectation of harm. We want transparency so people know what's going on. And if we want to keep our people around, we want them to focus and not multitask terribly, but actually focus on something and finish it and have a feeling of success. And we want them to work sustainably. We want them to interact this way, keep each other informed, decide who does what when, share work on goals and outcomes, and make decisions using the consensus mechanism. So this is how you can describe Agile without referring to a single practice or tool or artifact, other than by giving examples. So to facilitate all of this is the last one here, we want servant leadership. Not an Agile invention, but Agile takes it and dials it up even further. We want more leadership and less management. It might be done by the same people. More leadership to facilitate the success and the ability of individuals and teams to do good stuff. So, with this, we're going to move on to why these 26 got picked. And very soon, I'm going to have an exercise for you. We're going up the diagram that you have on page 1, this one. We're going to look at these 2 things. Values are what matters to us. And beliefs are what we hold to be true. We're going to start with beliefs. Now, beliefs are convictions or assumptions that we just take as true, but we can't actually prove, we're not going to prove, we're just going to operate as if they are in fact the case. So this is not about religious beliefs, that's another talk by somebody else, but this is about beliefs in the context of work. Let's look at an Agile one. You wait long enough with requirements, they'll get stale. Notice, this is not fact, this is an assumption. Here's another one. People will make mistakes, and our best way to mitigate that risk, I should say, is by having them collaborate in self-organizing teams. This is a belief. Some people try to prove it. There's definitely evidence of it being right, but that does not make it so, or fact, like gravity. Notice that this is a fairly recent belief. If you go back 100 years, the reigning belief to the matter of people making mistakes was that the best recourse is to have supervisors. Here's another one. Change will happen, and responding to it can be a good idea, can be a competitive advantage. Now let's look at some of the assumptions behind Waterfall. Customer knows what he wants. Now, usually this is the point where I hear a few giggles. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to personally agree with this because maybe your belief is different, but if you're working on a team where people do actually assume that, they will do certain things. For instance, what if they believe this and the next one? The customer knows what he wants, and we can extract that reliably from their head. When you believe these two things, you're likely to believe that putting together a plan is a good use of your time, and that requirements gathering is a good use of your time. Did it make sense? Here's a third one. People are interchangeable as long as they have the technical skills. Quite the offensive belief, but it's pretty pervasive. That's how the world got away with calling people resources. But look at this. This is an assumption. We can replace the people on our project as long as we hire properly. We should be good. That gives rise to a whole lot of behaviors, such as performance management. Now, you can make other assumptions. You need to be explicit about them. I'm going to show you a few that have nothing to do with either Agile or Waterfall, just to give you an example of some of the things that don't always go stated. Here's one. We need great people for great performance. We only hire the best. Now, what if we can't get them? Well, we'll still try. Here's another one. People really care only for themselves. So I personally don't believe that, but I've worked with people who do. And when that's the case, you probably won't have the principle of trust permeating your activities. Here's another one. I had to sneak this one in because I'm a parent, but the same applies in an organization. Okay? You only need to say something once. All right. So I have an exercise for you. I asked you earlier to think about your recent project, and you said A or W or M. I'm going to ask you again to buddy up with a neighbor, preferably somebody you work with if you're here with colleagues. Take 2 minutes to think about the people who are in charge of the work, or who are in charge of the work, and maybe that's you. And try to identify and articulate and write down one belief that they had, one assumption about the work, the people, the customer, doesn't matter. Not about the deliverable, not something like, our product should be scalable. That's about the deliverable, but something about the work, such as, this is rocket science. I don't know. Okay? So take a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to ask you to share, and we'll see what sort of examples we have. All right? Take 2 minutes. Okay. I'm going to ask for a few people to share what you wrote down, and we might need the microphone runners for this. I don't know where my volunteers are. Okay, well, I will hear you. You want to share? Oh, sorry, just to make sure we get the sequence right. I want to start with the people with the W. Then we'll get to the A, then we'll talk about the M. Sorry, forgot to say that. So the people with the W, the Waterfall projects, one belief. So people are interchangeable parts? Okay. Okay, that's nice and big. Okay, who's next? Oh, there's right near you, Matt.
product knows how to solve the problem.
Okay. Next. There should be no rework. Rework is evil. Yeah. Okay, one more. Yeah.
This isn't succeeding because people are resisting change.
So is this a belief about the work?
It's a belief of senior managers about the work that people are doing.
Okay, so I must have missed the beginning.
The work isn't succeeding because people are resisting change.
Okay. One more.
People can work on an infinite number of simultaneous projects.
And if infinite is not enough, we'll make it bigger. Yes. Okay, one more.
Estimates are facts.
Estimates are facts? Okay. It's the first time I'm hearing that one, you know? Okay. All right. Let's go to Agile. So the people who had this. Funny how it looks like a fist, but there's no communism here. Yes?
You need more planning.
That was in the Agile one or the Waterfall one?
Agile.
Okay. Okay.
Customers will not accept anything but perfect features. You know, so
And that's an Agile project. Okay. Okay. Yes.
Okay, I would say the collaboration, especially between the product owner, the business analyst, the developer tester, it'll ensure higher quality, a higher quality deliverable. So
Okay.
higher quality overall.
Okay. Someone in the back. Can you be loud?
People are smart and want to do the right thing.
And hopefully they can also work on an infinite amount of things at the same time. Okay. One more?
The team seems to get along.
Did I get that right? Okay. And one more here?
You should always hire the best talent.
Okay. Let's do one more. What?
Between the team's idea of done and management's idea of done, business.
But what is the belief here about it? Okay, so something like we can't agree on what done means? Okay. And this was an Agile project. Okay. Let's try one more that thinks of itself as Agile.
So we had one where our organization thought that our delivery teams, our Agile teams, any one of them could work on any one of our products.
Any team can work on any product?
Yeah, any team could work on any product.
Okay. Okay. So as you can see, there are some differences here. Some of the things here with Agile don't kind of surprise me, to be honest, but they definitely don't belong in the Waterfall camp. Okay, so the Waterfall camp very much assumes predictability, right? And maximizing that utilization. I'm not asking the people with the M just yet because I want to first share with you the Agile set of beliefs. Now, the Agile set of beliefs is essentially a narrative. You have this on the 4th page. I just want to show it very quickly. Okay, you have the fuller version written out on that page. And really, the categories are people, work, and the work's customer. As far as people go, we want to trust people to get the job done. So we want to hire, we want to employ people who are competent, we want to trust them, we want people who are motivated, we want to support them. And if that is the case, we assume that they will get the job done. Because of this, we give rise to ideas such as self-organization and trust and respect. Now, people will make mistakes, and then the corollary to that is what I said before. If they collaborate in self-organizing teams, that's a really good idea and a good way to mitigate that risk. In terms of the work, so Agile is formulated for complex work, the kind where it's really hard to understand all the effects of the causes that you're seeing. Or if you're seeing an effect, it's hard or sometimes even impossible to trace all the causes. So there are assumptions in Agile about this. One assumption is that planning alone is not a viable response mechanism, which is actually what most businesses try to do. They try to vanquish complexity with planning. So how do we get something better than planning? The assumption is that evolution, some people call this emergence, is the way to go. Same idea as in nature, only quicker. And the assumption is that the best enabler of evolution is the short feedback loop. But this can only work if the cost of change can realistically remain low. Anybody here who tried to use Agile thinking, not practices, on a scary, messy legacy system where everything takes forever because you don't know what you've broken, you'll know that the cost of change is ridiculously high. So even though all the Agile theory would work, everything will just take a whole lot longer, which makes it impractical. So if we choose Agile, it has to be viable in the context of our beliefs. So now let's talk about the beliefs about the work's customer. The first one, out of the gate, is that they could be wrong. The working assumption in Agile is that any one of us could be wrong, in particular the customer. And I'm using the generic customer term that Agile started out with. You might identify this as product owner or anybody else on product. Even if the customer is right, the requirements get stale quickly. If we want feedback from them, we better show them something working, not just an idea or an abstraction or a mock-up or a paper prototype. Because as human beings, they will give better feedback this way. And if that customer had to choose between effective and efficient, and most of us have to make that choice, although we tend to gravitate to efficient by default, that customer would actually go with efficient. In other words, it's the belief that customers prefer something working even if it's partial, rather than wait for perfection. So now that you've seen the set of beliefs, the Agile narrative, the beliefs, I'm going to ask the people who had an M project to stand up. No, stand up. Be brave. OK. I think there were more of you, so maybe it's just the afternoon. OK, so you know what? Let's do a show of hands. This will be easier on you. If you had an M, just raise your hand. OK, that's better. So everybody else, look around and see how many we have. I'm going to ask you to keep your hand up if the belief you wrote down earlier in the exercise aligns more with the Agile set that I just went through, or it feels like it aligns more with the Waterfall ones that we captured before. And if that is the case, you just keep your hand up. OK, so about half of them stayed up. There's another area where we can get in trouble with that whole mindset business, and that is the values. So a value is something that we consider necessary and important. Why do we consider it important? Because this is how we think we will be successful. Let me share with you the 4 Agile values. They're detailed on the 5th page, but I'm going to talk about them now. The first one, we want to deliver frequently. The word value, of course, appears twice here just to make matters complicated. We want to deliver frequently. We want to get started early. This is important to us. Why is it important to us? Because maybe in the situation we're in, delivering a big bang product months out is not as useful. It might be more useful to deliver smaller working things earlier. Here's another thing that's very important to us. Be able to change priorities quickly. That's why it's called Agile. So we want to be able to change priorities quickly and easily. Easily is actually the bigger adverb here, right? So if something happens, we want to respond to it. Even if that something that happened was just an omission on our part, there shouldn't be drama. It shouldn't be prohibitively expensive. We want the people who build the thing to collaborate with the people who asked for the thing. Traditionally, we would not do that. It was not important to us because we believed that the customer knew what he wanted. But if we don't believe that anymore, then what we're saying, no, it's important for us to collaborate or else. And the fourth one is that individual and interactions business, putting people first. This is important to us in Agile, to treat everybody the best way we can. Team, management, stakeholders, customers, even auditors. We want to treat everybody well with the utmost respect and participation and inclusion. So that, because we assume that when we do that, they will take care of product and process. So when we say put people first, it's ahead of product and process. Let me show you the counterpart values in Waterfall. The stuff that's important when we practice Waterfall ideas. Getting it right the first time. Think about it. All the planning and the estimation and the gates and whatnot, it's because it's important to get it right the first time. Now, there are situations in which this is absolutely the thing that should be important. I live in Toronto. They're extending the subway line, something like 4 miles. Better get it right the first time. I don't want anybody coming in a year in saying, guys, we're digging 100 meters to the left. That would be nuts. So we want to get it right the first time. Here's this one, a typical punching bag, but sometimes it matters. Okay, so the project I'm describing is done by the city in collaboration with the province and the government. They don't have all that much money to spend. So better get it right and sort of on time, right, and on budget. But here's another thing. Anytime you're asked to put together a plan that looks months out, that's because whoever asked you to do that wants the early commitment. Now, I'm not passing judgment on why they want that. Notice, this is not about right or wrong. This is about a situational fit. Maybe making early commitments just makes sense. Okay? And here's the last one. That's the counterpart to the people first. In Waterfall, it is absolutely critical for us to have a standardized process because we don't know who we'll get. We don't know who's going to be on the team. They might leave tomorrow. So at least we need to have a process that will guarantee success as long as we get people who have the right skills. So notice how when people talk about mixing and matching the best of this and the best of that, and they're talking about those two, those sets of values, they're at the top of the heap. They don't agree at all. You cannot actually mix and match anything here. The only thing you can realistically do is be people first in this one and toss this. And by the way, even that one has its place. I really like it when airline pilots and surgeons follow procedure. I really like it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I would just stay home. Now, other things might be important to you that have nothing to do with either Agile or Waterfall, but you need to be aware of them because they will affect how you get work done. Here's an example. Innovate. Agile is not for innovation. A lot of people pretend it is, but it's not. It's not designed for that. It's designed for delighting the customer. It aligns nicely with innovation if that's what you're interested in, but it doesn't have to. So if you are interested, then maybe you will make even smaller plans and use more experiments and fewer backlogs. Who knows? Here's another one. Avoiding disaster. Let's say you are the organizing committee that is setting up for the next Olympics. So in addition to all the important bits, such as housing athletes and shuttling them around and feeding them, and making sure that the competitions are okay and nobody's drugged and whatever. You also want to keep the terrorists out. That's a very important bit. So you need to be aware of it because it will guide a lot of things that you'll do at the principles and practices level, such as security. Here's another one. Maybe you work in a bank. Many of my good friends do. And the work you're doing, somebody is going to poke their nose into it and make sure that what you do is what you said you would do. And you know what? That's legitimate. As a society, we need that, so we need to be able to account for that. So maybe then including the sign-off principle, which is not by default in Agile, makes sense. Or maybe this one. We've had many data breaches in the last several years, and maybe you work in an organization where this one is a particularly big concern. So I want to show you how we put this together, and then I'm going to ask you to do an exercise. So if you, again, recall the diagram, our values and beliefs guide our choices. So here's an example. In Agile, we value adaptation. That's the being able to change priorities quickly and easily. We believe that short feedback loops are the way to do that. And therefore, we choose to plan and execute in short time boxes. By the way, if we don't like planning and executing in short time boxes, for instance, we're in support and we can't really commit to time box of any length, and we want instead to limit work in progress like they do in Kanban, that principle aligns nicely with this. That's why you can do both. But look at the counterpart. In Waterfall, we don't care for adaptation. What's more important to us is getting it right the first time. We believe that we can put together a useful plan for that. It's worth our time doing that. Therefore, one of our principles is to plan the work and work the plan. That's how you get practices such as % complete and weekly statuses. So the exercise for you is similar to what we did before. I'm going to ask you to think about the same people. Again, buddy up. Don't do this alone if you can. Think about the people in charge of the work. What was important to them? Now, this is sometimes hard to know, which is why you have these prompts here. Okay? You can tell what's important to people based on what they tell you worries them or what they really, really take a stand for, or when push comes to shove, how they make difficult decisions, such as downsizing. So, 2 minutes, write it down. Okay, that was 2 minutes. So would somebody who is in the A group share one? Go ahead.
Estimates.
So estimates is one of the things they care about?
Yeah, because they want to know, like, before we would start work, they want to be able to, like, plan capacity, like, how long it's going to take so they can kind of balance between other projects or how much manpower they need for the project.
Okay, so
And it's an agile environment.
it's not the Agile environment?
It is an agile.
Okay. Okay, so they wanted to balance the work. Okay. All right, someone else.
Self-organization.
And what is important in that?
People first.
Okay. So basically let people make the decisions? Okay. When we say people first, that covers a lot. Fair enough. Self-organization would be one thing that you would see a lot of. Okay. Someone else? So understanding why work did not get finished? And why is that important? What are they after? Okay, so they're really after consistency, and they do this by understanding the reasons for not meeting expectations. Okay. Yes?
Speed of implementation.
I didn't get the first word, sorry.
Speed of implementation.
Okay. One more?
Resource.
One more. Okay, iterative solution scoping is a practice. What are they after? What do they try to accomplish when they work, when they scope iteratively?
Changing requirements.
Okay, so really respond to changing requirements. Okay. Okay, now let's go here. So somebody with a waterfall type of work, would you share one thing? Yes? Okay. So basically minimize the cost, right? Okay. Cost and risk, yes. Okay. Okay, one more?
Minimal mistakes. Getting it right the first time, minimal mistakes.
Eliminating mistakes can actually be a separate one where we just don't want to be wrong. Like, yeah, okay. Sorry? Okay. One more? Okay. Now let's ask people with an M. That going through the agile motions. Yes?
Long-term solution versus short-term fix?
So which one did they prefer in general?
Case by case, depending, because...
Okay, so how would they make the choice? That's where the values come in. So I'm not quite sure what to do with that. Because again, when we think long-term, when we want to do short-term, this is when we do something, but how we approach it is what counts. Do we approach it, for instance, from the perspective of least regret? Do we want to approach it from the perspective of never lose a customer? Do we want to approach it from the perspective of just stay out of trouble? This is where the values kick in. Okay? So, someone with an M.
So we have three. Quality was really important.
Quality? Okay.
Yeah, just overall that, you know, it's bug-free. The user interface, it needed to look a certain way.
And why do they want it to look a certain way? What are they after?
Making sure that our customers are not confused by the website, that it's clear, that it's things
And
are
if our
phrased
customers
correctly.
are not confused by the website, then what happens?
They go elsewhere.
Okay. So this is really the big deal.
And then also ease of use on the back end for the content management piece, so internal ease of use.
And why is that important?
Because we had, in this particular case, we had people who hadn't been doing content management in the past, and so they needed maybe a little extra help in making it easy.
So is that what you meant? Make it easy for our people?
Right, internal ease of use.
Okay. All right, one more.
Customers. Yeah.
Okay. One more? Stay out of the news. That's important. Okay.
But on the other hand, the team, like the people who are doing work would think that the costs or why it is taking so much more is because the expectations of the requirement is really complex. So basically, expectations from other roles.
Okay, so don't, not like that. Don't miss expectations. Okay. So we have some data here. In the Agile column, we have things that generally seems to align with Agile. In the Waterfall columns, we have things that generally align with Waterfall. In the mechanical Agile, the going through the motions, we have a little bit of a mix. It's an interesting mix, actually. Some of it tells me that you feel like you're going through the Agile motions. It may not be going quite Agile according to your ideas, but if these are, for instance, looking out for the team and making it easy for our people, sounds like people first to me. So maybe this is better than you think. What usually happens when we look at what people actually value, when we ask them, and especially the line of questions that I asked you here, this looks important. Why is that important? What are you after? I'm looking for those values. What often turns out to happen is that people go through the Agile motions, but what they're really after is very much in this column. Let me show you an example of that. The daily stand-up. The daily stand-up was designed as a regular check-in. It's meant to be daily because that's, sort of not too long, not too little. It's a regular check-in so the team can maximize their value output. But what if your mindset aligns with the Waterfall one, where everything is predictable, everything can and should be predicted, and you believe you can get it right the first time? Then the daily stand-up is nothing more than a daily status, which allows you to maximize that work to plan. Right? You had a weekly status, now you have a daily status. Yay! Here's another one, the product backlog. The product backlog is this prioritized list of good ideas, valuable stuff that we might get to. Notice the word might, okay? Not must, will, or should, might. But taken with the Waterfall mindset, it's just the cool term for a project plan. And if the team says, oh, hold on, but we use sprints here, then just tell me what I'm getting in sprint 1 and what I'm getting in sprint 2 and 3 and 4. Just lay it out, and it becomes a project plan. Here's another one, pair programming. Pair programming was conceived as a way to collaborate because of the belief that human beings make mistakes, and they make lots of them, and the belief that if they work with somebody else, that's a good idea because others will catch them. So it's a collaboration, it's a form of collaboration. But taken the wrong way, and the wrong way in this case is looking at this and saying, this is nuts. Why should I pay 2 people for the work of 1? Right? Which is a case of underutilization. This is the Waterfall mindset talking. Here's another one, Scrum Master. The Scrum Master was supposed to be the servant leader who helps teams excel using Agile. Scrum specifically, but doesn't matter. Let's say Agile. Servant leader. The purview of the Scrum Master is the team, not the process. If you take care of the team, they will take care of the process. But with the Waterfall mindset, where we want to maximize utilization, work the plan, limit change, blah, 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 basically, this is somebody to do compliance with the process. Here's another one, the sprint demo. The sprint demo is really meant as an opportunity for feedback. Feedback from those stakeholders who asked for stuff a while ago and finally are getting something. And we want feedback from them so that we can remain effective, working towards useful outcomes. Instead, in companies where the Waterfall mindset still rules, and you go to the biweekly demo, and now it's a biweekly death march with an opportunity. Thank you. They're not ringers. It's a frequent deadline, especially for sign-off. Sign-off is not in Agile. Acceptance, which is a form of feedback geared toward effectiveness, is. So that's why I said that practices don't actually matter. You can do everything Scrum tells you, and with the Waterfall mindset, it will not do you a lick of good. It will just confuse people who think that, oh my God, Agile, what? Now we should be better. But they're not. You do it with the right mindset, Scrum is wonderful. So, before you ever start work, you gotta be explicit about not just the objectives. We all do this in our business cases and charters. But also, what's important here, such as staying out of the news, Yes, it's kind of funny to say, but let's face it, we care about it, okay? Or whatever else we care about. What are some of our assumptions? For instance, our assumption that offshoring actually saves us money, okay? But I didn't say that. Based on that, we need to determine which principles we want to work on. Now, you have shortcuts. What I described is basically a structure of a facilitated meeting, takes a few hours. I've done this a few times with clients. It's pretty amazing. It's a lot of fun, actually, but let's say you want to take the shortcut. Okay, you still identify what's important and what you assume. Doesn't take that long. And then you say, oh, looks like it aligns with Agile. Okay, good, so we'll take Agile and we should expect to see the benefits. Or maybe it aligns with Waterfall. Maybe it aligns with something else. And then you take that prepackaged construct that has been through the wash, and you use it, and you get the results. But the important thing is to match what you do to what the situation warrants and what you care about. So Agile is not for everything, just like Waterfall is not for everything. Each has its place. I want to give you some ideas about how to think about change. Those of you who have ever seen a talk with me probably saw this one. I milk this model for all it's got. It's a very useful one. It's called the logical levels of change. And the idea is that this is how people approach life. Everything flows from the top to the bottom. It starts with the identity. Based on my identity, I pick roles. I might think of myself as, I don't know, project manager in telecom. I don't know. So that might be a role. Other roles could be, you know, parent and consultant and community citizen, whatever. Based on that, I will know what's important to me. And it will change a little bit through life as I grow. But maybe as a project manager, let's say in telecom, one thing I care about is to stay out of trouble because my employment is very, very important to me and I do not want to disrupt it. Now, I will have beliefs that go along the way with that. I might believe that left to their own devices, people will do things that are not on the plan. That's an assumption. Based on that, I might develop certain capabilities to mitigate that particular risk. I might try to put everything on my plan, and I might have a daily check-in. I might drop in on people unannounced. So these are all behaviors. And I will do all of this in an environment that supports what I want to do. For instance, everything is electronic, so we only work electronically so that I have a trail for everything. So my choices would flow from the top to the bottom. Now, what if you want to change something at some level? Let's say you want to change a behavior. Let's say you want to stop smoking. So technically, you can go ahead and just change that behavior, try something new. We know that doesn't always stick. So what this model tells us is that the more viable way to change a behavior is to change something at a higher level. So I might want to stop, well, I don't smoke, but if I wanted to stop it, I might work on this by playing with my beliefs. I might say, you know what? I don't think an adult should be doing that. Okay, I tell myself a story. Beliefs are stories we tell ourselves, but it might be compelling enough to stop the behavior. But sometimes what people will do is they'll try to change it anyway and give it enough time. And sometimes that sticks and sometimes it doesn't. Let me give an example of the optimistic case. So before I moved to Canada 17 years ago, I worked in another country where I'd grown up, and I worked only in offices. There were no cube farms and stuff like that. There were only offices, and I really liked working in my office with my headphones. I would get into flow. I'd read about flow, and it was awesome, and I read some research that said that people in offices are so much more productive, so I definitely had that confirmation bias going on. Good. So I believed that being secluded was a good idea, and everything else flowed from that. Once I moved to Canada, I started working in teams that worked in either open spaces or cubicles. And while I initially hated it, and I definitely hated the decor, it's terrible, I actually noticed that it's better for me and for the team because it's so much easier to communicate. So my behavior change was not entirely voluntary, but it turned out okay. It turned out well because it shifted my internal beliefs. But it doesn't usually happen this way. And in fact, what will usually happen is if you try to change at some level and it doesn't agree with what's above it, the minute there is trouble, the higher levels will kick in because that is self-preservation. For instance, you might develop the capabilities that are associated with the Agile practices. You can learn to write user stories and prioritize backlogs and put stickies on the wall and blah, blah, blah. And you can start doing all of this, and your team might start doing all of this. And you might believe, genuinely believe that you're doing the right thing and that it makes sense and everything will be better and it aligns with your value system until somebody important and scary comes in and says, when will you be done? And you say, oh, I learned that I'm Agile. We don't answer that question. You say, no, 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 seriously, when will you be done? And this keeps happening, and your value of self-preservation kicks in, and you say, you know what, let me retreat to what I know better. This applies at the individual level, it applies at the organizational level. Why is this important in this talk? Because of this. This is where Agile lives, not in the open spaces, and the daily stand-ups, and the how to prioritize backlogs. That's not where it lives. That's just the pretty pictures. Where it lives is the 26 principles that fall out of the belief narrative and the 4 values. What I believe explains the particularly dismal state of Agile adoption around the world in this year of 2016 is that, by and large, organizations have made the changes here and not paid enough attention here. They haven't paid enough attention here for multiple reasons. The actual reasons don't particularly matter, but they can expect the backfire. And I think that in those organizations where the change caught and really, really helped things along is because the ground was fertile for this, right? Their internal systems are already aligned with this, or it was so much better than the old way that they just changed it. Yes. So, for Agile to take hold, we need 3 conditions. First off, the values and beliefs that you espouse need to be suitable for the situation. If you are, again, I don't know, extending a subway line, this is not for Agile. Sure, you can have daily stand-ups and stickies on the wall, and you will look cool, but it won't really matter all that much. It might make a marginal improvement because it will not be life-sucking. Fine, okay? Here's the other thing. We need everybody to actually agree that they operate with the same set of assumptions. One reason most Agile adoptions are dismal is because one side, there shouldn't be sides, but let's admit there are, one side, the team or management, agrees with the Agile view and the other one does not. And it can be either one. The other thing that needs to happen here is that people actually also need to agree to operate this way even when stuff gets hard and scary, because this is where stuff matters. If you bring in Agile on a greenfield project where there's no natural enemies and everything is simple, you will succeed. Big deal. What if you bring it into a situation where stuff can go horribly wrong? Will you actually follow the Agile line of thinking when stuff happens, or will you just retreat to the well-known, such as, where is your plan? So, 5-point strategy for adopting and sustaining Agile. You've got to start with this: clarity and alignment on values, beliefs, and principles. Not, again, here's how we do user stories around here. Does not matter at all. 2-week iterations or 3 does not matter. Call them sprints does not matter. This stuff does. If you're in any sort of leadership capacity, formal or informal, all of us have at least the informal, then you should set that expectation. That means operating with the principled view. That means, are we constantly simplifying, collaborating, deferring decisions we should not be making now, treating each other with respect, using consensus, and so on. Not, are your stand-ups 15 minutes or less? Not, are all your stories in Jira? Does not matter. Every move, you got to tie back to the mindset. So you have a stand-up meeting, and it is boring. In most places, it's boring. It's terrible. What's going on here? What's actually driving people? Maybe they're doing a daily status as opposed to a team activity that's meant to improve things. Okay? Or maybe somebody comes in and says, hey, we should do code reviews. That's a best practice. What's behind it? Are we doing code reviews because we don't trust each other? Or are we doing code reviews because quality matters big time and we just want to have multiple sets of eyes on the thing? It's a totally different perspective on the exact same activity. I coached a team once where I discovered that the team lead was sneaking in product backlog items through the code review mechanism. Everything that the product owner did not want to include, the team lead said, oh, failed code review because of these. And so the poor developer had to put everything in. All of the estimates blew up from like 2 to 5 of everything. Basically bypassed the product owner because clearly the team lead had no respect for the product owner. That's kind of terrible. How do you implement Agile? By implementing the principles. What are we doing for collaboration? What are we doing for feedback? How can we get feedback around here? Which feedback matters? How are we doing improvement? How are we learning here? Again, they're prepackaged ideas. Scrum, SAFe, all the other ones, they're prepackaged ideas. They are usually good starting points, but only if you do that. If you just take the pretty picture and copy it, it won't help you. And the last one, if anything is getting in the way of agility, such as we want to collaborate with our customer, but the customer will not collaborate with us, you got a problem. And that violates one of the 4 fundamental values of Agile. It's very common, by the way, because what it ends up being is that you do the other thing, but your customer really treats the team as order takers, and that's a sad place to be. So getting there will be painful. This is a well-known picture, the Satir change model, which tells us how bad things will get before they get better and what needs to happen before they get better. And in particular, that during this period of chaos, where you're trying to come to grip with the change, it's not only going to result in low performance, it's also going to result in people doubting themselves and people questioning their self-worth and asking you, what was wrong with the old way? So this is where you need leadership, not management. You cannot manage Agile into existence. It's a way of thinking that is really a culture, an organizational culture. You cannot manage it into existence. This is all leadership. And if you want one of the best keys to leadership, you talk to my friend Christopher Avery, who will show you exactly how it's done through responsibility, which you just need to model. You don't need the authority. All right. And if you want to know how well you're doing, please don't measure velocity. It is not meant for that. You want to look at, again, principled behavior, not how fast are we cranking out stuff. Because cranking out stuff doesn't matter, but making the customer happy does. And that you can really check with a very simple question. I believe that's it. Thank you all.